The Hill is a decidedly progressive YouTube channel that usually does a fairly decent job of presenting the facts surrounding highly charged events. Although I oppose them on almost all topics, I hold them in fairly high regard. Well, until Jessica Burbank showed up. Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With cold, blunt analysis cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnny Walker Dread to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's time for the Johnny Walker Dread Show.
This concerns the Chrystul Kizer case, and Jessica is going to weigh in and compare her to Kyle Rittenhouse. Let's see how she does.
Criminal justice and crime have emerged as key issues in this year's presidential election. It is clear that the Democrats have moved away from some of the language they have used in 2020 when the Black Lives Movement was at its apex. The 2024 party platform, on the other hand, says we need to fund the police, not defund the police.
Gee, why? I thought that crime was at an all-time low. But now we have to increase funding for the police? I wonder what they're admitting.
Stark shift from the activist messaging of the last election. Also calls for more police on the streets, nor does it express opposition to the death penalty the first time since 2012. This is all a marked change.
Today we want to discuss one case. It's the case of Chrystul Kizer, the Black teenager shot and killed a 34-year-old white man named Randall Voller III, who sexually abused and trafficked her when she was just 16 years old.
There is no evidence of that. The prosecution denies it. She at first claimed to not know Volar, then made up a story about her shooting him while he was sexually assaulting her. Because he was found in a chair with shots to the back of his head, that wiped out her claim of self-defense. She never mentioned anything about trafficking until her attorney told her that a trafficking claim could possibly get her off. All of a sudden, it's, I was being sexually trafficked. By the way, are you talking in a hallway?
She killed him when she was 17. Last week, a Wisconsin judge sentenced her to 11 years in prison with another 5 under supervision. That's after a petition to drop all charges garnered 1.5 million signatures. And the Wisconsin Supreme Court ruled in 2022 that her lawyers could argue the crime was justified because she was trafficked by him and was the victim of his kidnappings.
First of all, petitions are irrelevant. Justice is not meted out according to popular sentiment. The uninformed public can believe she's innocent all it likes. Courts are the ones that make such decisions. Her claim about the state Supreme Court decision is reasonably accurate, but misleading. It was still up to the judge to decide whether the jury would allow such a defense in their decision based on whether he felt she provided enough evidence to suggest that sexual trafficking was an open question. She would have almost certainly had to take the stand to establish such prima facie evidence.
So, what does this case say about the justice system?
Well, to answer that question, you need to analyze a lot of research. That is, get informed. You didn't, so you can't answer the question.
It reminds me of one of my favorite movies of all time, Robbie. You usually talk about movies. I have a movie, A Time to Kill.
No, don't do that. We don't do that. A Time to Kill is a movie. It has no place in a serious academic discussion.
It's with Matthew McConaughey, Sandra Bullock's in it, and a man in the South, a black man, had his daughter attacked and brutally raped by a group of men, and he, in a rage, killed, allegedly, the man who did it.
Allegedly? Really? You have to use allegedly to describe the actions of a movie character? Yeah, we wouldn't want to unfairly incriminate a person who really doesn't exist.
Or one of the men who did it. And the jury found him not guilty. And I think there's some kind of sort of insanity plea that makes a lot of sense when one of your close loved ones is murdered or has something horrible done to them. Something just takes over instinctually to want to, do something about it. And I think this is one of the cases where 17 years old after going through this. Was she in her right mind? But what would the implication of an insanity plea here be? Because many people would say you're in your right mind if you want to do something like that to a person who abused you and who held you hostage, trafficked you. It kind of makes sense. It feels like self-defense to some extent. And so it's a very interesting case where people are grappling with, well, maybe morals and the law are not the same thing.
Insanity plea? It would be kind of hard to plead insanity when A, you planned the killing and had plenty of time to think over your decision, B, set fire to the house to destroy the evidence, and C, bragged about the killing on social media. And note, Chrystul never raised insanity as a defense. So just shut up. And if it's such an interesting case, as you say, why didn't you learn more about it?
Yeah, so I read, there was an opinion piece in the New York Times. It was an opinion piece about this woman, Chrystul Kizer, written by an opinion writer named Rachel Louise Snyder. I questioned a lot of the assertions in this piece. There was a lot of claims about racial and gender-based imbalance and how these crimes are prosecuted that I wasn't sure about. The kind of sex trafficking catch-all. I mean, she was basically doing prostitution with this person in a pimp role. I don't think that's a reason to kill someone. You should just get yourself out of it.
She had already gotten herself out of it. She moved away from Volar. If she never wanted to see him again, she could have done that. She went out of her way to hunt him down.
But the instigating event when she killed him, it wasn't like revenge or some kind of escape, but he was assaulting her. He was on top of her. He was trying to rape her. Again, I don't know if these details are accurate.
They're not. Don't trust the New York Times to get anything right on politically charged topics.
But that's what is alleged in this article. In which case, then I would say it's not a like philosophically self-defense. It's just literal self-defense. He was attacking her, and
yeah, I do think there's a case to be made for self-defense in this case, but also it is common in this kind of, pimp scenario that a lot of the women that work for a man are subjected to give him sex. It's kind of like an exchange for services. And so I really don't understand how 11 years plus 5 years of supervision makes sense as punishment for this crime when you have people like Kyle Rittenhouse getting off scot-free.
First of all, she can make her case. That would imply presenting evidence to a jury that would make them think, this looks like self-defense. There was only one problem. She pled guilty. That makes it a bit harder to make your case. Second of all, Kyle's case was clearly self-defense. All 3 shootings were captured on video, and there were numerous eyewitnesses. I have yet to find a law tuber yet who examined the evidence and said, murder. But you're missing the biggest point of all. Kyle fought the charges. He went to trial. He even took the stand to present his case and subject himself to cross-examination. All 12 jurors, after examining all of the videos and eyewitness evidence, agreed it was self-defense. All of them. Did Chrystul defend herself in court? No. Did she have video evidence showing him attacking her? No. Did she have eyewitnesses providing evidence that she acted in self-defense? No. Chrystul pleaded guilty to murder, and your pea-sized brain can't figure out how she was found guilty while he got off scot-free.
I just think the application of the law, especially in terms of self-defense, should be more consistent, especially across race.
Well,
and yeah, I think people feel a sense of justice. I saw a sign around if a woman is raped and she can be charged with murder if she gets pregnant and decides to abort the child, what incentive does she have to just not murder her rapist if she's going to jail for murder anyway, if she doesn't want to carry the child?
What? Why are we talking about this? How did she get a co-host spot on The Hill? Did she engage in some Chrystul Kizer behavior for this promotion?
And so there's a lot of interesting questions around justice and what it means to kill someone who abused you in today's day and age. That sign is becoming increasingly popular at a lot of these protect the right to abortion, people being against the anti-choice crowd rallies.
So this is all about abortion, or is abortion a topic that lives rent-free in your head, and so you have to steer every conversation onto it? Kyle Rittenhouse was ambushed by a violent felon. He shot the man because he was attacked. Chrystul Kizer shot a man to steal his car. Even if you buy her story about self-defense, none of this has anything to do with abortion.
Right. I mean, you can't kill someone just for abusing you. You can you can go to the police and the police can charge them with something. You can't, I don't want some kind of vigilante system. You bring up Kyle Rittenhouse, who was correctly, in my view, I actually did a lot of radars on it on the time, correctly found innocent for shooting people in self-defense who were attacking him.
I bet you that Jessica Burbank is squirming right now. I only wished that we could see her face right now as he's talking. But notice something. He said he researched it. That's the difference. He looked into the facts and he came away with the conclusion that Kyle's shooting of Rosenbaum was self-defense. She didn't do the research, and that's why she does not understand why he can make such an absurd claim.
Who one of the survivors testifying during the trial that he was that person was the initiator, and that Kyle Rittenhouse was responding. So again, just as that, I think ended up being a much clearer cut self-defense case than it was made out to be in the media before the trial got underway, and then we saw a lot of the evidence and testimony that it really was self-defense. Again, I don't know exactly what the details are here.
No, you saw the evidence. She didn't.
This is a very, frankly, biased, to my mind, telling of the facts. But if this person was attacking her, again, not just like he had abused her at some point in the past, because if that was the case, then you should go to the police, but was actually in the process of physically assaulting her, so yes, then self-defense is justified. I think it's helpful to avoid overcomplicating issues or bringing in like race and gender in the entire system. It seems in this case it should have been self-defense. Now, she ended up not going to trial and pleading guilty. This is a problem with the criminal justice system because she didn't want to face the risk of, like, this happens all the time because everybody gets overcharged.
Overcharged? Hardly. But I understand. You read garbage printed by the New York Times. In your defense, you questioned it. That's good. To get a better sense of what happened, you should read the response to Chrystul's appeal. I have a video on it. If you do, you'll realize that Chrystul Kizer is a violent street rat who murdered a man in cold blood, not to protect herself or even as revenge for what he did to her, but rather to steal his car. Oh, by the way, Chrystul had just previously been convicted of a felony. What was that felony, you ask? Car theft. Volar had a nice BMW that she wanted to give her brother. That's why she did it. And how do we know this? She texted this to her boyfriend on the way down to kill him.
I think that whole process is very bad and deeply in need of reform. It should be judges and juries determining guilt and the appropriate punishment for people accused of crimes, not legislators who are writing these, who are saying you can't. There's a mandatory minimum. You can't consider any exogenous factors. You couldn't say, like, maybe this would be a case where they'd say, well, it was the killing, her actions were too extreme given the situation she was in. Because that judgment is being taken away from the judge and the jury. They wouldn't get to do that, so I can't risk it, so I have to plead guilty to however much time she got. That's a problem.
I agree with him 100%. I understand why legislatures do this. They get tired of hearing judges letting violent criminals go with a slap on the wrist. But keep in mind that a judge doesn't have to abide the legislation. He or she can give a milder sentence than the law mandates. That was settled in a Supreme Court case. Few judges would ever violate the law, however. There was one sad case out in Nevada where a woman was sentenced to life in prison for letting a minor fondle her breasts. She admitted to being drunk at the time and was extremely remorseful over what happened. I mean, a life sentence? Her attorney even told the judge that if she had instead murdered the kid, she would be facing a potentially lighter sentence. But the judge gave her life anyway. This is what happens when legislatures overreact to certain crimes. Yeah, no one likes child molesters, but putting in mandatory life sentences is not the answer.
Yeah, it's a huge problem in the criminal justice system. You'll have detectives give false information, misleading information, saying the other defendants or co-conspirators already spoke, and if you just confess now and take this plea deal, you're going to get less time, you're going to get a better deal if you tell us everything you know.
So she agrees with him about these mandatory minimums. I wonder where she was when Kyle Rittenhouse was facing a mandatory minimum. Oh wait, that would be somehow different. For the rest of the podcast, she goes off on a weird tangent that is not worth our time. Like my video and subscribe to my channel.